Welcome everybody. As those coming in, excited for today's conversation. Just a couple things to note as you're kind of getting into today's webinar. You'll notice there's a couple options in here between chat and QA. We'll talk a little bit about this a little bit more later, but just want to kind of surface a couple of those things as we kind of go through today's conversation, have an opportunity for you guys to ask questions and leave comments throughout today's walkthroughs. With that said, I'm super excited to introduce and share all the great walkthroughs that we're going to go through today. Appreciate everyone taking their time to join us today. My name is Anthony Montalbano, VP of Customer Success here over at Rivet. This is our first webinar in our new product walkthrough series, where we plan to provide in-depth walkthroughs of the latest and greatest in Rivet. And I'm really excited about what the latest is here today. So again, before we get started, I do have a couple housekeeping items I want to cover. This session is being recorded, so every registrant will get a replay in their inbox. So if you have to drop early, don't worry, you'll get a replay of this entire video. And also to keep us on track today, as I just mentioned a moment ago, we'll hold the Q&A towards the end after our product walkthroughs. Feel free to drop any questions in the comments as they come to you, and we'll do the best to answer them after the demos. With that said, today is all about the two newest features at Rivet, the automated initial job forecasting and the productivity risks dashboard. Both of these features shipped in our June 16th release, which means everything that you're about to see today is already available in your Rivet account. I'll be honest with you, both of these updates are a massive step forward, not just for Rivet, but for how every contractor is forecasting and scheduling labor. I'm going to steal a line from a colleague who stole a line from Eisenhower that plans are worthless, but planning is everything. And automated initial job forecasting makes sure that every job starts with a plan, and productivity risks are going to show you where that plan is going off course while there's still time to act. Because yes, we know that forecasts are going to change. Every job does. That was never the point. Without a plan, a change is just an assumption and a scramble. With a plan, a change becomes a decision. What we're going to show you today is built to make you a better planner. So let's take a look at today's agenda. We have two of our top account managers here to walk you through these features in more detail. First up, Brittany Young. She is probably a familiar face to many of you as you're getting the most out of Rivet. She's going to walk you through automated initial job forecasting, why it matters, and how it works. After Brittany, we're going to have Jesse Takarchek, also a familiar face, who will take over on productivity risks. She'll give you a breakdown of those key risk factors that we surface and show you how to use a dashboard as your secret weapon to understand where jobs are at most risk. Last thing before we dive in, we also have two additional colleagues on the call, Dana Proudfoot, our Manager of Customer Success, and Paul Carollo, the Product Manager who oversaw the development of both of these features. Paul's also watching in the comments, so again, drop those questions in there, and we'll answer them after the product walkthroughs. With that said, I'm going to switch it over to Brittany. So Brittany, take it away.
Thank you, Anthony. Hi, everyone. As Anthony mentioned, my name is Brittany Young, and I'm an account manager here at Rivet. Before I jump into a demo for the new automated initial job forecast, I want to take a moment and talk about why forecasting is important. So as we're all aware, labor is the single biggest risk on any job. It's your biggest cost, and it's the hardest thing to predict. A forecast is what turns that risk into something that you can see coming instead of something that you find out about halfway through the job. The problem is forecasting has historically been a manual job. Someone builds that labor curve in the spreadsheet that's based on a gut feel and experience, but then once it's built, it rarely gets touched again. It's then disconnected from the schedule in the moment that it's created. That's what we've changed over here at Rivet because we turn that static one-time estimate into a living labor curve. So instead of a forecast that sits in a folder, you get real insight into who you need and when that actually drives schedule decisions. And the goal isn't just some jobs get a forecast when someone has time. Every job should have one because every forecast feeds directly into your labor demand dashboard. That's what gives leadership one place to see all of your labor needs across the entire company and not just job by job. So here's the part that I'm excited to show you. Getting that first forecast built for each job used to be manual and a time-consuming step that I just described. But with the new automated initial job forecast, Rivet builds that baseline labor curve for you automatically from the bid hours, the job dates, and industry standard curve model, and no manual setup is required. So let's go ahead and jump right into how that works. And can everyone see my screen? Awesome. Okay. So as I mentioned, when you log into Rivet, you'll land on your labor demand dashboard. This gives you a bird's eye view of all of your labor, which includes your one jobs forecast, your prospective jobs, your schedules, any labor requests, along with your current active workforce, all in one view. We'd like to use the analogy over here, the forest versus your trees. So essentially this gives you your forest, and then your individual lines per week gives you your trees. So let's look into how you were to forecast a job today. If you come down to your jobs table, let's look at this manual forecast demo job, for example. I'm going to go ahead and hover over the job name and open up this view job pages icon. And currently today, as long as you have these three pieces of information, your current hours budget, your start and end dates, which we see we do have all three pieces of information here, you would have to manually go into your labor curve in the job plan and create a forecast. If you're electrical, you can use the industry average to go ahead and build your curve. We have some commercial, schools. You'll see that the curve changes a little bit based on the unique situation. If you're mechanical, you have this example. And then you also have some common curves as well, even, front end, centered, if you want to peek towards the center of the job. Quite a few options that you will have to come through here and select which one makes the most sense for this job. You can also fine tune and then hit create forecast. Always a good rule of thumb to go ahead and confirm and read what is in that box to make sure that's what you want to do. Once you have your forecast draft in here, then you can publish a job. If you don't give it a name, then it will default to today's date and hit save. And then that's the manual process that you will have to go through to build a job for build a forecast rather for every single job. Now let me show you what the automated process looks like. This lives in Manage Org. This is available to all admins. And then if you see here in jobs, you'll see a blinking hotspot that we'll get to in just a moment. But we have this new section here, create forecasts on new jobs. I also want to highlight that as soon as you toggle this on, this does immediately take effect. So it's something to kind of think through and talk about with your organization before you enable it. But for the sake of the demo, we're going to go ahead and turn it on, because as soon as you turn this on, a forecast is going to automatically create for any new job that has a start date and end date and current hours budget. This includes all jobs that are added manually or via integration. Any existing jobs are not affected. So the job that I just updated the forecast for, that one won't be affected. It's just for any new jobs that are added that have a start date, end date, and current hours budget. We'll come back to this sentence in just a moment, but I do want to walk you through what the settings are right here. You can also set a threshold. So if I were to turn on a small jobs threshold, for this example, any jobs that have 2,000 hours or fewer than that will not get this curve that I select down here. They would just be built evenly instead. So you can set whatever that threshold is that you would like. Otherwise, you can keep it toggled off. But when it comes to the default curve types, you have the same exact options that we saw in the forecast builder. So you have your industry average, commercial, schools that we looked through for electrical. You have the same option for mechanical and the same for all those common curves, front end, centered that we looked at. So for this example, we're going to select all of my electrical jobs. I want to apply the industry average curve for any new job that comes in that has a start date, end date, and current hours budget. I can also set exceptions based on my job tags, but these have to be set up by display group categories as well. So that's something to keep in mind here. But let's say if I want to set an exception for all of my plumbing jobs, and I wanted that one to get the mechanical industry average. You can set as many exceptions as you would like, as long as those jobs are set up with a display group tag category. So now let's go ahead and see what this looks like in practice. Let's go back to, one more thing I do want to point out first is that The forecast is going to continue to auto update until it is manually edited or the job has scheduled workers in the past. So as you continue to update your start date, your end date, and current hours budget, you'll continue to see the forecast auto update as well. And we'll continue those automated updates until we notice that you essentially start doing manual work on the job or someone's making any changes. And then that signals us that you've got it from there, and that breaks the automation. So now let's go ahead and see what that looks like in practice. Let's go over here to our jobs and let's create a new job. Let's call this job name the auto forecast. And let's give it a job number. Let's give it a start date. Let's start clean on a Monday. Let's push this out about a year and give this current hours budget of 20,000 hours. Now we're going to walk through the same workflow that we did earlier. We're going to hover over the job, open up the view job pages, but now we see that we have a forecast that was created. How do I verify if this was created by automation or if this was manually built? If I go up to the top right in version history, I see here that this was auto built and the time and date that it was auto built. If I go to these three dots and hit info, then I can also verify more information here. Let's say if we were to go down here to setup, and let's now change the start date. So let's push the start date out by the week. And let's save that. And now let's say we had a change order and we're going to increase our current hours budget by 30,000 or an additional 10,000 to 30,000. And we save that. Now if we go back up to labor planning, the top left here, and we look at our version history, we can see the two changes that we made. This is from when we changed the date. So we had a slight change in our forecast. We see that slight change here. And then we also see the change that happened when we added an additional 10,000 hours. Just like any other versions in your version history, you can click on these and always restore that version. Otherwise, you can always click on here with these three dots to get information and see that we auto built this as well for the changes. Let's say if there was another change and now we're going to manually come in here and just make a drastic change just for the sake of showing what this looks like. We had a huge change order. We need to start the job with about 50 workers towards the beginning. We're going to publish that job. We're going to catch it as more than a 5% shift in our hours and publish a major version. So now, if I were to go back to my version history, I now see I'm at version 2.0. If I click these three dots in info, we see that this was created by myself at this time of date, and it is not showing auto built anymore because I went in and manually made that change. So just as we talked about the analogy before, this is your individual tree. So this is how you manage the individual labor on the job, but that all rolls back up to your labor demand dashboard. And now we see this spike right here that we didn't have before because this is your overall forest. And that's how this individual tree or the job affected the overall labor for the company. I can even go into view details. I could drill into this week specifically. I can now ascend or descend these forecasted workers. And I can see that this is the project that is driving that peak. And now we can have a conversation about it in our labor meetings to understand, does this make sense? Do we need to make any changes? What exactly is going on with us forecasting 50 workers needed? To reiterate that this is a huge benefit for auto forecasting your baseline, because this helps PMs and project managers or anyone who needs to update labor plans by eliminating that manual effort for creating a forecast for every single individual new job. Now everyone could just jump right into the job and begin adjusting the forecast. Also, an additional benefit is that schedulers don't need to wait on this step because they could come right into the job and begin scheduling. And also using the recommendations, we go back to the job page. You'll see the recommendations that are built right here to get that job scheduled. The one thing that I'll leave you with is we'll go back to Manage Org. We'll look at this blinking hotspot. And then this gives you a link to the knowledge base article, which takes you to our resource center and walks you through everything that we just went through here as well. Another way to access that is in the bottom left corner, Help and Resources, the resource center, and then you can search for that article there too. I hope that this was helpful. If you do have any questions, like Anthony mentioned, please ask them in the Q&A section. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and pass it back to Anthony. Thank you, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you, Brittany. So now that every job has an automated start with a forecast, a plan, let's take a look at how you know when that plan starts to slip with our productivity risks dashboard. With that said, Jess, take it away.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you everybody for being here. As stated before, my name is Jessie Tokarczak, and I am an account manager at Rivet. Just another reminder to drop questions in the Q&A section as we go, and we will take them all live at the end. Today, I'm going to walk through the productivity risk dashboard, so I'm going to set the table a little bit before we get into it. Right now, you probably find out a job burned too many labor hours the same way that most contractors do when the reports run at the end of the month and the budget is already gone. So what we're going to show you today is the first experience in Rivet that surfaces productivity risks while the job is still running, and you can actually change the outcome. So the industry data says on the average job, about 10% of labor hours end up as overrun, while the best run shops hold that under 5%. That gap is not random. It typically comes down to a set of decisions about how a job gets staffed and supervised. And if you catch them early, they are fixable. So we are calling them productivity risks, and we're going to focus on 3. The first one is planned overmanning, and you've likely felt this before. A job looks fully staffed, sometimes intentionally overstaffed for a push, but instead of finishing faster, it starts to slip. There is a threshold, your peak crew above 1.6 times your planned average, where adding bodies stops adding output, and Rivet will flag that the moment you cross it. The second is dilution of supervision. So one foreman running 6 people can make fast calls, but that same foreman running 15 does not. Decisions get delayed, rework creeps in, and it's not because the foreman is getting worse at the job. The third is turnover or loss of learning. Every time you rotate a new worker onto a job, they are behind the curve. So rotating people on too often, and you pay to reclimb that curve over and over. These 3 are backed by NECA and Electri research, and we have validated them against tens and thousands of completed jobs in Rivet's own data set. So let's move over to the platform and get the live demo going. Are we all able to see my screen? Perfect. And so a good thing to note here before we begin is that the productivity risk dashboard is a new permission, and we have backfilled this for everyone that already has the view dashboard permissions. The first thing that you're going to see when you land in here is this onboarding banner. And the only thing I'm going to point out is I recommend clicking the link right here. This is going to bring you to an article written by our CEO that kind of connects the dots behind some of the productivity risk research. If you have been to this page already and have X'd out of the banner, the link is still living right over here in the corner, so it is easy to pull back up. But for the purpose of the demo, we'll go ahead and get rid of it. The next thing that you are going to see is the shape of your portfolio in 4 numbers. So we have how many active jobs you have flagged right now. We have how many hours you stand to lose across them, what that is as a percentage of your labor budget, and then the actual labor budget itself, scope to whatever you have filtered on. Below is what we are calling the composite impact table, and this is the table that you are actually going to live in. So this is going to be every flagged job with the highest severity first. And for each one of these, you're going to see each 3 of the risks flagged and then how far the job has run. So a job that is 90% done isn't really going to be a rescue mission. I'd say that's more of like a lesson to learn conversation as compared to a job that is 30% done. That might be something that you could still turn around. So we recognize that. And not every job on the list deserves your attention. And we give you 2 ways to control the noise. you are able to click on this little X on the right and dismiss a job, maybe like job ending soon. You can go ahead and dismiss, and then you will see that fall off your list. The other thing you are able to do is you are able to exclude small jobs. So if you toggle this on, it gives you the option to set a threshold. So we're going to go ahead and put our minimum budget as 1,000 and save this for everyone. And you will see one of our jobs has dropped off the list. So looking back at the composite impact table, we're going to hover over one of these risk chips. We're going to look at this Bank of America job. And so we want to know why Rivet has flagged this project. This chip is going to tell you the math behind the number. So for the Bank of America Tower project, our ideal plan peak was 8. On average, we were over 3.1 for our ideal plan peak, and we were over that for 8 weeks. Our maximum over manning came in at 2.4 times, which is higher than our ideal 1.6. So we can go ahead and click on that chip. It's going to take you straight into our details table, and it's going to take you in for that specific risk. Right here, we have planned over manning. And this essentially is going to be the same data that you saw in the hover state, but now sortable and filterable on its own. We have the same for dilution of supervision and turnover of loss or loss of learning with the definitions as well. And let's go back to the original productivity risks view. Down here at the bottom below the composite impact table is the early job risk table. So before a job ever shows up as overmanned or undersupervised, it's usually going to show up here first as just running off pace, hours burning faster or slower than your plan. So that's the earliest signal that you're going to get, and it's the one that's going to give you the most runway to actually do something. Here you're going to be able to toggle between actuals trailing, so behind, or actuals ahead of forecast, and you're going to be able to see that actuals variance from your forecast. So we're going to go ahead and open the job page for a specific job. And when you click right from the dashboard and you land on the job homepage, you'll see you will land here with the productivity risks panel already open. So it's going to live on every homepage for anyone who has access to the job. But if someone who never opens the productivity risk dashboard, they'll still see it from the moment they open the job. So as you scroll up and down, the card is sticky and it will remain open. You are able to minimize it, and this will live up at the top of the page. And each job has its own card, and it's going to tell you 2 things. It's going to tell you what's actually wrong in plain language, and it's going to give you a button that takes you where to fix it. So all these insights have an action. So if you're flagged for overmanning, you're likely going to need to adjust your forecast, and you're going to see that it's motioning for you to open the job plan to adjust here. If you are flagged for supervision, if your ratio is outside of that 6-to-1 threshold, you're going to go into your schedule and adjust that. If your turnover is flagged, it's going to usher you to go to your schedule, click here and see maybe you can shuffle things around to see if there's a way to keep your crew a little bit more consistent. There's no more digging through menus to find out where the fix lives. The other thing it's going to surface here is your slippage variance. So it's going to bring you to the labor planning page. And here you're actually going to see the visualization of the slippage. The other elements that you will see here are probably familiar from the labor demand audit on your original dashboard page. So you will see your overscheduled, underscheduled, and your stale forecast signals here. And we will go back. So the goal here really is to help surface some of these risks while there is still time to save the job, not after the month closes and the numbers are already final. Thank you guys for taking the time to be with us here today, and I will kick it back to Anthony.
Amazing. Thank you, Jess. And again, thank you, Brittany. 2 incredible walkthroughs. And hopefully you're already thinking about how these are going to fit within your operations. One thing I want to share that's really incredible. Our Productivity Insights engine was built on more than 100 million hours of scheduled work and Rivet. So there's some serious backing behind our insights that we're providing. So as we're starting to close out today's conversation, we are going to open it up to some Q&A. Before we do get started, again, we have about 10 minutes for questions. Paul's been tracking any of the comments throughout the session. If you have some more, please get them in now so that we have an opportunity to answer them for you. And if you think of a question later, don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager or your implementation manager. They're here to support you with that. 2 additional reminders on your way out. The replay will hit everyone's inbox by the end of the week, along with the short survey. Please take a moment to fill that survey out. Your feedback will be incredibly helpful as we look to share more product walkthroughs just like this. And again, the second thing I want to remind everybody, everything you saw today is live in your account now, so you're able to do exactly what you just got shared today. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Paul. Paul, what questions do we have?
Thanks, Anthony. Great demos, Brittany and Jess. Thanks so much for taking the time to walk everyone through these new features. We expected we'd get some questions coming in, but we did seed the Q&A with some of the FAQs. We've been hearing about these as well. So I'll start with some of our FAQ questions, and then we did get one from the audience that we'll be covering as well. So on the FAQ side, we'll start with auto forecasting. Something we get asked a decent amount is there a way to exempt a specific set of jobs from auto forecasting entirely so that they would get no forecast at all when they're created? The answer to that, not as a per job setting today. So automated forecasting is turned on for the entire company at the company level, not job by job. If you remember from Brittany's demo, you can exempt smaller jobs to get just an evenly distributed curve instead of one of the default curves you can select there, but that is still a forecast. The one way that a job would be exempted is if it doesn't have the minimum criteria, which is a start date, an end date, and an hours budget. So that is one way. If you don't want a job to get a forecast, you could keep it out of the auto forecasting engine. But there is an option just to say never forecast this class of jobs. But that is something we have heard a bit about. If you have other questions on that, please feel free to chat those in. Another FAQ we get is if we've already manually edited a jobs forecast, would the automation come back and overwrite it? And the answer to that is no. I think Brittany did a pretty good job showing this off, but we want to make sure it's clear. Once you have manually taken over a jobs forecast, that's the break point. So it's yours to manage from then on. We don't want to be overwriting forecast values that you've entered into your job forecast. Auto forecasting is merely meant to be kind of that starting point, that baseline forecast that follows you up until that point the job is starting and you're taking over control. So you should never see a situation where Rivet has overwritten some of your manual edits on a forecast. Now, we did get one comment about auto forecasting that I wanted to cover here as well. I believe Maria chatted in a question about, well, when the auto forecast is created. She saw in the version history that you could see if it was a manually created forecast version or an automated version. And the question was, on that version history, is it possible to know what user triggered the automated forecast? This is a good question. Not directly at the moment. We are working on some functionality to add this feature to the action log. And what we want to be able to trace is what is the type of action that caused the auto forecast to be created or recreated. In the case of an initial forecast, if it was a user that manually created the job, you should be able to see that in the action log today, and you would know that a user creating that job is what caused the forecast to be created. But we are looking at creating a more richer kind of traceability of this through the action log in Rivet. So that's a good question. I did see a new question came in for auto forecasting from Jeff. Thanks for the question. The question was, if I toggle the automated forecast on now, will it affect unforecasted projects? That's a great question. We built this in a way where it will only be future facing. So jobs after you turn that toggle on, new jobs that are created either through the integration or manually, those ones will be the ones that will kick into this auto forecast motion. We thought it'd be pretty disruptive if you toggle this on and say you had 500 jobs that didn't have a forecast. in your backlog, that those would instantly get an automated forecast. So this is really a future facing feature for future jobs being integrated. I think that concludes our automated forecasting questions. Oh, looks like there's a new one from Julie. We'll stay on the auto forecast topic for one more question. Julie said, if I enable the automated forecast, will it allow me to select a 410 work schedule, or does it default to an 8-5 schedule and require me to update the schedule afterward? This is a great question. So as you create the job, it will follow whatever schedule you've saved with the job. If you change the default schedule for the job, say you were 8-5s and you move to a 410, if you haven't already manually edited the forecast, that is a trigger to reforecast the job. So we're going to do a brand new forecast for you using that new schedule. So that's a really good question, Julie. Hopefully that answers it for you. Okay, I think we got all our questions on automated forecasting. Perfect. So now we will move on to productivity risks. If any more come in, please keep chatting them. We will cover them in an email follow-up afterwards if we're not able to get to them here live. So there's a couple of FAQ related questions around productivity risk that we've been tracking as we started to roll this out, and I wanted to cover those here because I think it'd be useful for everyone. So we sometimes get the question around, what makes a risk? We have those 3 productivity risks we're tracking. What makes a risk show up as high, medium, or low? And are these configurable thresholds? So I'm going to keep it kind of high level, but this question actually begs probably a more in-depth Knowledge Center article, which we'll be working on here to talk through some of the formulas and how we calculate high, medium, and low. But at 30,000 foot view level, every risk is rated high, medium, or low based on how far a job crosses that risk's individual threshold and how long it stays there. So the more severe and more sustained the risk factor is, based on those kind of baseline thresholds, that'll push it towards a high versus a low. What we're intentionally doing on the dashboard is we're aggregating all 3 of those productivity risks together and rank ordering them by the most risky at the top to the bottom. So no one individual risk is going to push you to the top. It's the culmination of all the risk factors on your job coupled together that would, mark that job overall as highly risky and one that you may want to hone in on and take action on. There is, very specific formulas for each productivity risk for overmanning, supervision, dilution, and turnover. And again, I think that's something we'll create an article on and perhaps send in the follow-up to this webinar. One other FAQ item we get a fair amount on for the productivity risk dashboard in particular is, do we need to be forecasting our jobs for the productivity risk dashboard to work? And the answer is it depends on the risk. So the forward-looking ones we have that are risk indicators around planned overmanning, slippage, over and under scheduling, and stale forecast, these all obviously need forecasting data to be meaningful and to have any sort of calculation put against them, because we're comparing your plan or your forecast again against what's actually happening on the job. But there are 2 productivity risks we're tracking that are more based on your scheduling information, and this would be supervision, dilution, and turnover. So this is drawn from the actual schedule on the job, who you've actually got assigned and in what role they're assigned on the job to make those calculations. So the one thing that is true though is a job needs either a forecast or a schedule to show up at all. So there's not going to be jobs on there that have no data against them whatsoever. To get the full and complete picture, you'll definitely want both scheduling and forecasting, and that's kind of what this webinar is all about. And that's why we built the automated forecasting feature. We do believe every job deserves a forecast, even if it is just that initial baseline forecast that you can start creating a more detailed plan against. So just checking the chat again, I believe that is all the questions. I think we got them all. If there are any other last minute productivity risk questions or auto forecasting questions, please feel free to chat them in and we'll make sure we address them in the follow-up to the webinar. Thanks to the presenters. Appreciate it. Back to you, Anthony.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Paul. So that brings us to our time. Again, if there are additional questions that come up, again, you can either reach out to your account manager, implementation manager, or follow up with Rosie chat. Any of the questions, we're happy to address those. But again, I appreciate everybody spending some time this afternoon with us. Huge thanks again to both Brittany and Jesse through those walkthroughs, and for Paul and Dana to help support all of the questions. As I said before, everything you saw today is already live in your account now. Once again, this webinar was recorded and we will send it to everyone's inbox by the end of the week. This was also, like I said earlier, our first webinar in this new product walkthrough series. So we'd really love to hear what you thought. Should we do more? Was the length all right? Time of day? Again, we'll include that follow-up survey along with the recording to learn what we could do better. You remember, if you need any help, that's what you have your account manager. Implementation there is there for. Again, appreciate everyone's time today, and we will see you on the next one.
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be bright, 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 sunshine day.